Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming back after the break. For those of you who've been sitting here in the bliss of things, wow, what an incredible Lionsgate meditation. I know that I went for a walk around my block to just kind of take in nature and feel into that bliss point again. I even looked up 0 point. And I thought that was actually quite fascinating. Somebody mentioned in here that it was what did Simone said? The brand is only zero. So that's one clothing brand. 0 point is, according to quantum field theory, it was something there. We have a point zero, which is a clothing brand in Canada. And I thought that this one was interesting. In Wikipedia, a 0 point is the hypocenter of a nuclear explosion. Yeah. So here we are. We went into this 0 point energy where we had the ability to expand from there and become so much more. Very, very magical. We have our next guest speaker here, the beautiful Barbara Worsley, the East Coast Dragon Lady. I've known this beautiful soul for well over a year now. She's been part of my podcast, both Step Into the Light, Step Into Your Life, and on Dragon Tales. Of course, we had to have her on Dragon Tales. You can see the magic behind her. She's just really been quite involved with dragons for a little while. It'd actually be a shorter time than you would think on one hand because of her background. And what I've been really finding interesting throughout this is hearing what some of the people's backgrounds are, like the neuroscience or a school teacher or just all these different types of backgrounds. And then where we are today, it's just wild to witness this. So let me just tell everybody a little bit more about you first, Barbara. So, in short, she's affectionately known as the East Coast Dragon Lady and Galactic Dragon Ambassador. She used to be or is a retired. I was going to say you used to be a retired registered nurse, but you are a retired registered nurse who has dedicated her life to spiritual exploration and dragon wisdom. With a career spanning over 30 years, Barbara has delved into various modalities, making her a channel to numerous dragons, dragon collectives, and ascended masters. And I think you are just so absolutely beautiful and magical. I'm really looking forward to this conversation today and learning more about that connection with the messages and the collective of dragons, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's all whenever when we've met to do any of the podcasts, we're always like, okay, we won't talk about dragons, and dragons always like
Yeah,
show up.
right.
So, which is sort of which is always what happens, right? And I've got many stories about you talk about them and they show up. But yes, I think you're right, and you're right. I really have not been, even though my resume, how it was put together sounds like, but I've only really connected with dragons for 3 years now. It was actually 3 years ago, and I remember it was in the summer, and I had been channeling ascended masters and various other beings, and I was out for a walk, and I heard, look up," and I was like, I'm going to look up. And when I looked up, there were dragons in the sky, and I was like, am I seeing dragons? And they'd never really featured in my life. It wasn't like as a kid, I was like, well, I was into dragons. No. And, thankfully, we always have our cell phones with us now, right? So I'm like, I'm taking pictures
Yeah.
because even if just to prove to myself, I'm going to take these pictures. And I came back with probably about 10. And then I was just blown away. I looked, and some of them were full-size dragons. I have to find them again and repost them. I actually have them. I actually framed them. And there's several huge dragons landing. And I could actually see their faces when you sort of zoomed out. I could see faces, and there was at least 6. And of course, I said, dragon, why am I seeing dragons? And I got nothing. No, I mean, no channeled message, nobody saying, oh, well, you're seeing them. And then I sort of started calling around to people I knew that might have known about dragons, and they were all like, oh, I don't know about dragons. No, try talking to this person. And it was about 2 weeks. They just left me with, I've met them, now what? And then they started slowly sort of talking to me, and I referred to them as my sky dragons. And I still do. These were not just clouds. I mean, they were diving in and out of the clouds, but it wasn't just clouds. And that was really my first connection, was seeing probably about 6 dragons. And then it was just little conversations. They would give me little snippets, not big conversations. And then I started to hear and meet other people that were seeing, talking, feeling. And I always say that everything I know right now, the dragons have taught me, like, because you can't really go and Google it, or you can, but then you get, you might get video games. And
the Wikipedia version, right?
You do, and you're like, that doesn't sound right. So I tried all of that. And then I actually connected with people like Caroline Mitchell and in England, which is, here I am British and they're in England, and Diana Cooper. They were my first 2 sort of real introductions to, oh, this is what dragons are about. And it actually then, and as I've learned since, like, I didn't know why I was channeling or speaking to ascended masters or angels or anybody else that came through, Galactics. It was not making sense to me, but I decided I would go along with it. And that was sort of I decided about a year or so before that I would take the whole year just to go on a journey and see where it took me, because I didn't know where I was meant to go. And that was when I encountered all these things, but it still didn't make sense until I met the dragons. And the dragons were then explaining, well, this is why you needed to connect to the Galactics, because we're galactic dragons and we're collectives. And everything started to make sense.
I'm going to interrupt you there, because I know you love to talk about this, and it's very passionate in your heart, and you can literally carry the conversation on by yourself. And I say that with so much love, because you're passionate about this topic. I wanted to highlight a couple things for the group, though. One is something that I heard, and you guys may have seen me go, to that. You said that you saw these clouds, and then you realize they weren't just dragons, they were your dragons. And I've got these pictures myself where at the beginning of my journey with dragons, my consciously aware journey with my dragons is how I actually want to word that. I remember coming around the corner, leaving my place here, coming around the corner into this big parking lot and looking up, and there was this massive, massive cloud dragon in there. One that I did use in some of my things. And you're saying this now, that it was possibly my dragon, just changed my whole point of view on that dragon. Like, I can't wait to go look at this picture again and make a connection in an entirely different way. I also heard you say something along the lines of that you weren't aware of the why you were going through all of these different things, and then it became clear. So I hope that everybody's kind of catching all these little bits and pieces. We don't know what's going on in our journey until suddenly it becomes clear, right? Thank you.
Yeah. And I've said this, I know, on a couple of podcasts, but I'd not engaged with dragons, but my spiritual journey did start 30 plus years ago. Only when I moved to the United States, interestingly. When I was in England and working as a nurse, it was none of that. It was after I moved here, a few years after I moved here. And then life happened. So after I connected with Reiki and other things that I learned, I got divorced. I needed to work full time. My kids were teenagers. They needed me. And I drifted away from it. And it was sort of, say, 4 years ago because people kept asking me, are you still doing that energy work? Are you still doing this? And I was like, no. And then I kept thinking, okay, now I am going to let me go on a journey. And I picked like the beginning of the year and said, okay, just show me, just take me. And I went to various modalities, did some refresher, met a few people in different parts of the country that spoke to me, angels, archangels. And that was when I was then told. So what changed for me was I was doing what I called automatic writing.
Okay. Until
somebody pointed out that I was actually a channel. And then when I said to myself, oh, I'm a channel, it completely changed, because it wasn't just sitting there writing.
Exactly. So did you guys hear that? She said, I am a channel. I remember I was saying in the last call that when we actually, I think it was the opening today, that to really be consciously aware of that I am, because that just manifested for
Yes.
you.
Yes.
Boom.
And it literally went from just sitting, writing whenever I felt, to hearing messages, being aware that I was actually, and it was that somebody had to say it to me and then to a group of people and said, you're a channel, and why aren't you using your gift? And by the way, she channels ascended masters. And I went, oh, I do, because I was getting messages, but I wasn't connecting it. And I think that does make, and I think it's probably the same with the dragons. Once we say that either we've seen them, we feel them, we know them, they're very loving, heart-centered, but they do get very excited. And certainly my experience has been, once they know that you can hear them, feel them, you understand them, they move really fast. And there have been a couple of occasions where I've learned to say, whoa, just a minute. Because they forget that. So what they tell me is, we forget that we're human, and that we can't, like, we can deal with their energy, but it's when we get bombarded with so much stuff, and it's like they want you to do this and do that and then do this and go here and do this, and I was like, whoa. So they're learning from us as well.
You said something very, very powerful just then. The word whoa.
Oh, yeah.
Like quite
Whoa.
honestly,
Yeah.
this is, I don't even know where to start with that, because and I do. It's just that I want to go blah at you guys, and I'm basically, as I'm blabbering away, I'm letting it hone in on what needs to be said or would like to be said. In essence, we have the power, and it's how we ask, how we command, how we respect, how we want it to slow down, whatever the case is. It's really recognizing how much power we actually do have. Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah. And I'm the person, I have to learn by my own mistakes.
Yeah.
So I actually learned that I wasn't feeling overwhelmed. I was just getting like really tired, and like I couldn't put my finger on it, but I felt physically unwell. Okay. And it was the dragons that actually said to me, oh, wait, I think we're like giving you way too much energy. And they then said, we're going to stop right now. We're going to back off, and then you come to us. And there was this period where I was like, this feels odd, because we get so used to, like, the background chatter, right? And then there was like nothing. But they were right. I needed a good couple of weeks just to like recenter myself and then say, okay, I get it. And they were like, okay. And they will remind me now and again, are we going too fast? And they will often give messages like that, remind us to slow down. And I think that's why when I get talking, I want to say so much, because they're pushing that that energy through as well.
Well, and I can hear it in your throat chakra too,
Yes,
right?
it is.
Like
Yeah.
that's what this is about. It's
Yeah.
not about for those of us who are possibly on our beginning of our spiritual journey, where we're learning about our own expectations, limiting beliefs. That's where the throat chakra is really aggravated, because we aren't putting to voice our personal desires. This is entirely different here with Barbara. This is about that the flow is so constant, or so I don't want to use the word constant, but it's so there.
Mm-hmm.
Present, I guess, would be the better word than constant. It's so
Yes.
present
Yes.
that's what it is coming up.
Yes.
There's something else too I wanted to say, and I can't for the life of me remember what it was. Oh, what the heck was it? Bear with me, have a second. I think it's gone, so it'll come back if it needs to.
Right. Yeah. I just saw somebody said they like my background. So that's the next, we can talk about that as well.
Please.
So it's part of my Oracle deck that I produced this year. It's one of, I took some pictures when I try to meet other people. We try and either match up our backgrounds or that sort of thing. But yes, I've learned that I can take a photograph and then put it as my background. So
love it. I remember what I was going to say now. I basically, what I wanted to do was present a question to you, and it's about channeling, because as those who attended the last piece, as well as some of the other people. You know when people are channeling because of whatever's coming through. It's you can't make this stuff up, is kind of like the
No.
phrasing. However, what I wanted to ask you about that, I'm always consciously aware that I'm channeling, and 99% of the time for myself, I am aware of what's actually being channeled as well. There are those who have no idea. They go into this state. And my question to you isn't about that specifically. It's more about the messages that come through. Uh, are there moments that you're like, oh, that, how am I supposed to deliver that type of message
Mhm.
versus, all the bubbly good ones? And what's that human piece of that?
Right. Yeah. So interesting you asked that question, because not always do I get things that I'm like, oh, I can't really, that, not
I
sure
know
I'm
it's
going to
not very
go
often.
there.
Yeah.
But just recently, I actually got a download, and there was parts of it that I chose not to publish, especially, so it was actually Commander Ashtar had given me a very long message, but he also kept saying, I want to speak, there's things I want to say, but it's not the right time. And this isn't the place. I'm here to work with you. And he sort of gave me a hint of it.
Okay.
And it could be controversial.
Fair enough.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Most of the times though, the dragons want to give us loving, encouraging
Yeah.
messages. They want, they walk alongside us. So if people ask questions, and sometimes I'm surprised about what I get. And they've had me practicing, and I know I've said this before, but they can be very directive when they want something, like my oracle deck. They, very prescriptive in colors, title, what I was going to say, how I was going to, and the messages, how they were. And I was like, okay, you got this then. But very even picking out colors from Crayola. So that really made me laugh when they found the Crayola palette and said, these are the colors you use. And I'm just remembering as well. So my web designer, and she was my artist. She actually said to me, well, I know you like bling, so I made them with bling. So they've got lots of color, but they wanted very vibrant. That's what they were saying to me, very vibrant color. That's what they wanted to get out.
Love it. Yeah. So what has been, now I know that most, I'm not sure that that's what wants to come through. Um, I was gonna, and maybe I need to phrase that out loud anyway. I was going to say that I think would probably be the better way. Thank you. I think that most of your messages are for the general public. Throat chakra.
Yeah. Yes. So most of the messages. So I work with collectives. They've told me that that's one of my abilities, is to perceive. So I've seen lots of. I mean, over this year, last year, and this year, there've been a lot of dragon collectives coming in. And I know I caught you saying something about elder, about being we. I'm an elder, and I've been here. I was here before Earth was even thought of, along with Merlin and several other people. It's things I'm learning now. So yeah, I've forgotten where I was going with that, but definitely I think that remembering, like, so what's happening with me is my soul's waking up.
Okay.
I mean, well, even though our souls are awake, and this is what a lot of the collectives are here for, is so that we can, and that was a message I got the other day, is so that we can not get rid of, but drop away the things that our soul no longer needs, which allows us to, but that's what a lot of us chose to come to Earth for at this time, was to do that, was to tap into our soul. But before we can tap into our soul, we've got to things have got to happen. And for me, it was the biggest thing for me was how I closed down my heart. I mean, I knew that. I mean, in the physical, I knew that I'd done that. And it wasn't, and I'd done lots of work, you know, all of that, but it still didn't feel I was shifting it. And then I encountered, even though I'd not met my dragons really, because I still wasn't seeing, other than the sky dragons, I hadn't really seen dragons. I went on a meditation to Inner Earth and met the Agarthians. And as I was there to see Inner Earth, these dragons came at me, and talk about a thunder of dragons. I mean, there was this rumbling, and all I could see was this vibrant colors coming at me really, really fast. And they literally stopped, like right at my nose. I mean, just stopped. And there was all these vibrant colors, huge dragon faces. And they wanted me, I've got goosebumps doing this. So they asked me to hold their faces and look into their eyes. And as I did that, my heart burst open. I mean, literally, it burst open. And I heard the windows and doors have opened in your heart. Wow. And just flew open. And I was like, that's what I need. That was what I needed. And it was after that encounter of all these dragons allowing me to look into their eyes, was then I started to understand that, you know, my many lifetimes, but really remembering my soul's purpose and then now I get those messages about we've got to get rid of the things that are holding our souls.
Wow. You know, I'm having a very interesting moment here because of what you said about, you know, you had done a lot of work and heart work, like that inner child work,
yeah.
whatever work entails, right? When you're talking about our spiritual metaphysical journey. And I remember too that I had been for quite some time, and then I was in this holistic natural store. And the woman said to me, "Oh, there's your heart's not open." I'm like thinking to myself, "I've been doing all this work. How can you tell me that my heart's not open?" So I love that awareness that you've shared that here, and it brings that awareness to me because it was after that point that I did something very specific with mantra work and opened my heart as well. So yeah.
And I think that, you know, when I said in the physical as well, you know, I'd done the talk therapy, I'd done, you know, all the other stuff. And, there's still that like one thing that you'd be like, you know, I'd even done some of my, you know, past life, clearing those timelines, parallel lives, all of that. But what I needed was the dragon's help to actually show me that that was what was needed. And that has then opened me up to really be able to hear the messages from the collectives and why are they coming here, and why are they here? Why are people waking up to dragons? Which is fascinating because, and it's not just always one voice. And sometimes I don't know who it is. I often ask, but they usually say it doesn't really matter. And I think I've shared this before, that they can actually be funny. And, you know, they say we're very human when we ask for things like, well, what's your name? And they say, well, that's very human, but I'll give you a name if that's what you really want. And then they thought they were being really funny, and they gave me a lot of very old English women's names like Mildred.
Well, I get Herbert all the time. My name's Herbert.
Yes, right. Because it's like, okay, you want to name? I mean, and then there are dragons that want to be named and known by name. So it's not right or wrong. It's just they find it funny that we want to put a human label.
Yeah, very much so. So let's talk a little bit about this channeling, this collective. I love the energy of this collective. So, first of all, I get the impression that by no means is there only one collective in the world, period. So let's start there, maybe.
Many collectives, and I probably only like encountered a few of them, you know, like everything and so the collective that beginning of this year or the end of last year, early this year, with the collective that came to me to specifically do this oracle deck are a good example. I became very aware of what seemed like out in the I would say in the distance, but it was out in the galaxies, out in the stars. There was, gold color, like sparkles of color. And I was just very aware that there was a lot of it coming towards us, and they were heading for Earth, but they were telling me they were from galaxies, star systems, out of our world, but they were coming here for 2024. And interestingly, when I started to share it on like Facebook, people were saying, I think some of them have landed here in different countries, because whatever I was describing at the time, but they then became, as they came into focus, they were talking about, they were saying they were elders and guardians, and that they had been here long ago, and it was time for them to return to help us. And then they were giving me messages, but they specifically said, we want you to use this energy to do the Oracle deck you've been talking about, because I'd been talking about it. And then my friend had said she would like to be the artist. And I said, okay, let's go for it. And what was interesting was I got the messages, sent them to her, and she produced the dragons.
Wow.
And it was like, wow, that's right. That was exactly what I thought. But again, they were prescriptive, because it's got to be this color and this and this. And then they would give their stamp of approval. And it was fun to do. It was, so they'd actually told me they said, why don't you take a week off work? Because I work full time as well. Take the week off. And I was thinking, well, I'll get all of that done. I'll get this Oracle deck all done. So they were great at the beginning of the week. And then they said, you know what? I think you need the rest of the week off. So we'll come back next week. And I was like, okay. So what they really wanted me to do, they gave me, because you use a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And they were like, now you need to rest, and we'll give you some more later on. And I was like, oh, I thought I was going to, very human of me to say, oh, I'll knock it out in a week. No. And then there was a lot of, once we'd actually got it together, then there was a lot of reviewing and rewriting and spell checking. And I self-published. So that was a little bit. Yeah.
So I'm hearing a couple different things, and I'm using you as the example right now, Barbara. Like, how does this want to come through? When you're on this journey, each of us as individuals, you'll have heard throughout this whole summit that everybody's journey, first of all, is entirely different from one another. Barbara's has had very specific moments, very, very specific moments, and very specific information. And I know for myself, mine has been, kind of not necessarily wishy-washy, but wandering, and not really understanding where to go. And yet when I get that moment, I pay attention to that moment.
Yeah.
And does that mean that more moments are going to come together suddenly for me? Possibly not. But for yourself, like these, when you have a council like that, and this is probably, I'm speaking to myself as well as the group here, is when you have a council or a galactic collective, if you will, there's all kinds of different words. It's upon us as well, the individual, to go, you know what, I would like more information, right? Because you could have just ignored everything, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And for the most part now, I know, so I'm not somebody, so when I channel, I don't have to like go into meditation. It's almost like somebody taps me on the shoulder and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. Or if it's not the right time, they seem to know when it's the right time, right? It's because I find if I'm like, okay, I've got time, and they're like, yeah, not today. So, but I'm very aware that they're like, okay, we're ready to give. And sometimes the messages I get are short, and other times they're 4 pages.
Wow.
But recently they've been much more to the point, like short to the point. And that changes, and it changes, I think, so the feeling I get, especially as I've done a lot of work with the Galactics, that's how they gave me that title. So when I met my dragons in Inner Earth, they said, well, we're here because that's a portal for us to go out into out into the galaxies, then out. And they said, we want you to be our, because every now and again they give me these titles. So that was why I got that Galactic Dragon Ambassador. But because I met the Sky Dragons, most of my dragons, or most of the work I do, are with Galactic Dragons. And they're connected in all sorts of ways. And that's like a whole nother thing. But I think what's important is that they have sometimes very important information for us. And then and I also, each day I put something on my Facebook page. Either recently it's been my own Oracle deck, but I often use Oracle cards.
Mm-hmm.
So what they wanted me to do was to pull an Oracle card each day, but not, and then tap into the energy of that card and not just write what the other person had written. So I always give them credit, whoever's deck I'm using, but then they wanted me to tap into that dragon energy. And sometimes it's not dragon, but a lot of time they'd say, just tap into it and give a message. So they were sort of preparing me to do this Oracle deck, because that's literally what I was doing. Here's the title, tap into it, write it.
Yeah, I'm loving this. What would be a word of advice that you would give us about I'm going to leave it at that. What's a word of advice that is being directed in at this time?
So I think what the dragons are saying is that they're not hard to connect with. So a lot of stuff, if you read anything that I get, they often talk about sitting in stillness or sitting quietly. And then you will either hear them, feel them, because not everybody sees full-blown dragons. A lot of people will see dragon eyes. They will see part of a scale, because sometimes these dragons are really, really big, and then smaller ones. But a lot of times, you catch them out of the periphery, on the periphery. And I think they want us to know that we don't need to be afraid of them. Well, I always preface this by saying the dragons that I connect with, because there are dragons that people go out and fight and do all sorts of things. The dragons that I connect to are all heart-centered. They're here to help us elevate ourselves and be there. And they've got a similar frequency to archangels, and some of them are connected to archangels. And certainly Merlin, who has been a guide of mine from the beginning, he likes to shapeshift into being Merlin the dragon. So they, often if you know your dragon, I refer to them by their color or whatever, or whoever's close by will come. Certainly the elemental dragons are easy to call because they're here. And they always say that you will hear something, you will see something, you can touch them, but they're not far away, and all you have to do is call them.
I love that. One of the things that I just heard you say that I want to bring to people's attention, you said something about out of the peripheral. How many of you guys, ourselves included, get this sense that something's there, but when we turn and look, there is nothing there. So, that's that other dimension. That's that other realm.
Yeah. And they are higher. And actually, the other thing that they remind, because they always get me to say this, is that one of the other things to connect with them is that we need to ground ourselves very deeply. So when I started to realize that I could communicate with them, I asked them why. And they said, because you ground yourself. My practice has been for many years to ground myself every day, and literally tie myself. I'm a Pisces, so I tend to float out if I don't do that. And they said, the deeper that you can ground yourself, the higher vibrations you can perceive or can connect with. So
interesting.
Yeah, and I say, it's not difficult, but a lot of people find it difficult to ground themselves. But it's like brushing your teeth now. Like when you're brushing your teeth, just say with intention. It's just an intention to be grounded and firmly on Mother Gaia. And, she will help you as well to keep you firmly here. And then you can hit much higher vibrations.
Isn't that interesting? Because what I'm sensing from what you just said there is I'm recognizing moments where I may be connected in more deeply than I normally would have. And it's
Yeah.
because of the grounding practice I had that day, possibly, or that week, where I actually did go through the
Yeah.
dirt, down through the crystalline and down into the
Yeah.
mother core of the earth.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
And I would say as well, sometimes just with intentions. But I said a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't have." I was the person that say, "Oh, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time. When am I going to fit that in?" Well, when you're cleaning your teeth, or when you get up in the morning, or when you take a shower,
That's
it's
right.
intention, right? It's just like wash over me, ground me, done. Okay, we're ready for the day.
Yeah, and I agree because as we're sitting here talking, I literally had this I
Yeah,
chose to recognize who I am here, that Mordwin is with me, that the crystalline dragon is with me as well. And
right,
it's as simple as that, right? It's just the
right.
thought.
Yeah, it is. It is just with intention. And I've learned a lot of that as well. Especially as they also decided to show up a while ago to show me how you can do dragon healing with their help.
Yeah.
So
So
they actually showed up in a session and said, "What are you doing? Step aside."
I love it. Yeah, it's not for us to question why the dragons are here, but to accept that they're here, right?
Right. Yeah. Because I
Yeah,
think, and some of them will, if they want to, they could go at there, keep you talking about that for a long time. But I think you're right. I think they don't want us to like grill them with it. They're here because we need them and they need us. And they actually chose to. I mean, there's many theories, but they chose to leave um, many centuries ago because they were. They either were going to get killed or they needed to leave. And a lot of them went out into the galaxies. And now they're feeling it's safe again and they're coming back.
exactly. So, I know that you have a beautiful offering for the group, and it's a 45-minute free clarity call with you.
Yes.
What do you mean by clarity? What does this mean?
So it's interesting because the way I viewed it was because a lot of people, especially after, so we've just had Dragon Thunder, our second
Yeah.
Galactic Dragon Thunder. The first time that I was the co host with Kevin, when we just did the international one, the Dragons were saying to me, people are going to still have questions. People are going to be looking for community, connection. You need to do something. So I've been doing my Dragon Hour. And then this year they were saying, people still have questions like, offer to come and talk to you.
Mm.
I do offer some services, but often people just, so that's why I offered it was I did it for Dragon Thunder and for this to, it's not that I'm going to try and sell you something. We might do a little healing session. A lot of times, 45 minutes, we can talk a lot about dragons or people, or if they do feel that a healing session after we talk, then they can book a healing
That's
session with
right.
me.
That's right.
And I have my Oracle deck as well. And that's for sale as well. So
I want to just say something about what you just said there, that there is this misconception that if people get on a phone call or some sort of, a clarity session or a
yes,
discovery session, that all that we are here to do is attempt to sell them something. And that's not the case.
no,
I think it's really becoming very clear, especially with this summit. It's all about woo. It's about supporting one another. It's about having you understand further
right,
the possibilities, right? And you also just mentioned your Oracle deck. I will let everybody know that they're not available on Amazon.
no,
However, if you go to our guest speaker page and you start to go through that guest speaker page, Barbara's actually number one on there right now.
no,
And if you click on that learn more, it will actually take you over to that area that has our paid offerings, such as mine, the Inner Dragon Quest, and her cards are there. And every one of the guest speakers has this beautiful little section over there that has a paid offering at a ideally drastically reduced price right now. So I definitely recommend that you
yeah.
pop over and check that out. Is there any parting words that you'd like to leave with us?
Um, I well, they've reminded me that they actually gave me a message that I put on my Facebook page that they wanted me to share with you. But I also wanted to say that you can find me very easily, just East Coast Dragon Lady at gmail.com. So yesterday I asked them, not because it was the Lionsgate, but I knew I was doing this. And usually the dragons have something they want me to share, beginning or end of I do something. So this is, so I asked them, what did we need to know today, which would be Lionsgate. So the wind dragon showed up. Clear the path to your success. Hold the vision that is truly yours alone. Hold it in the highest light, purest light and love. When you hold the light within you, it is seen by many as a beacon. You are truly guiding many souls out of the darkness. You are a light to the lost, a lighthouse beacon signaling those who need to be guided. Walk with this light within you. Walk the path that others may not take. Walk alongside you. We walk alongside you daily. We dragons are your guiding lights, your beacons, your love. We are inspired by you, dear humans. You are brave, so very brave. You have chosen this path and chose to come to Earth at this very time as lights of love. We love you. We hear you. We hear you. We thank you. And that was from the Elder Dragon Council.
Wow. Thank you so much. My lips were tingling. That's one of my hands and
chills.
Lips. Those are,
yes, I got the chills whenever I do. But they're the sort of messages I will receive. But I couldn't have written that. So.
Exactly. And I love that here in my province right now, it's 1:11 when we got that message. Wow.
Yes, that's true. 1:11. Yeah, that's good. But yes, well, thank you. Thank you for putting this on. This was like really, I think, very needed for whether you're established or you're just connecting with any of this, because I think we forget that we were all at the beginning at some point, right? Yeah. But there wasn't the internet.
Exactly. So Barbara, I've mentioned this a couple of times. It's likely going to be an annual event to have this all about woo. And I know I haven't said this specifically to every guest speaker, but I do mean it for every guest speaker. Is love to have you back. Just love to have you back.
I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. And actually, you're going to be on my Dragon Hour.
I am.
Yes. So yep, I'm getting that. So in September, I'm starting back up with my Dragon Hour. So so we have more talks of dragons.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you.